Hi everyone, Merry Christmas. Welcome back to the Ministry of History. You're here with me, Artie, the Minister of History, and a guest today, Sarah, a fellow tour guide here in Berlin.
Hello.
Welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for, or I should say Sarah, shouldn't I?
You should try.
Yeah, okay, Sarah in auf Deutsch. So guys, as you might know from the podcast episode I just released, today is the 110th anniversary of the Christmas Truce of 1914, okay, which was a truce between German soldiers and largely British soldiers on the Western Front in Europe during obviously the First World War. And yeah, if you didn't know, I just released a podcast episode about it. But basically, 10 years ago, on the centenary, so on the 100th anniversary, in the UK, a supermarket called Sainsbury's released a Christmas advert about the Christmas truce. Now, in the UK, we do actually have quite a tradition at Christmas time of retailers, big retailers and like supermarkets, making very kind of high budget and quite elaborate Christmas adverts. Which is it the same thing in? I mean, no.
Discounters do like the big Christmas time stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah.
No, but these are things that have like stories, like plots, and yeah, it's I think maybe a very kind of British capitalistic thing.
I think
but
so,
yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, some of these adverts are amazing, and me personally, I think the one that we're going to see is it is probably my favorite Christmas advert of all time. But basically, guys, what I wanted to do with Zara here is I wanted to get the German perspective, because obviously it's something that I think in the UK we remember very proudly. And obviously because, you know, we won the war and you know, we were on the sort of right side of history. But, you know, I think that shouldn't take away from the horrors that were also suffered by the Germans as well. And, you know, German trauma, German suffering, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's why I've asked Sarah here, just to get that perspective. So yeah, are you ready? Should we have a look?
Yes, I haven't seen it.
Cool.
So,
wonderful.
yeah.
That's a good start.
It's a good start.
Great. Okay, wonderful.
Jenkins, Oakley. No.
All is calm, all is bright. Nur das traute hochheilige Paar. Holy infant, so sacred heart, sleep in hellish peace.
Ein Blitzer kommt! Ein Blitzer kommt!
Jim? Jim! Don't do it!
Halt! Er ist nicht bewaffnet! Nein, Otto!
My name is Jim.
Mein Name ist Otto.
Pleased to meet you, Otto.
Freut mich.
Rose, she's called.
Das ist schön. Das ist schön. Frohe Weihnachten.
So, what did you think?
It's so weird.
Really? How so?
Because I do remember the German, like Edeka and Rewe do have adverts at Christmas, but it's more like old grandpa sitting alone at home. So it is kind of a story, but it's not. It's more like be together, but it's not. Let's pick a dark spot in history and use it as advertisement for our chocolate.
And the thing is though, this is actually because in the UK there was actually quite a bit of controversy over it because a lot of people thought that it shouldn't be used for commercial purposes.
Yes. I mean, because the very next day they started killing each other
Exactly,
again.
that's the thing.
So, I mean, it was, actually I was thinking about, because I rewatched a video today to get my facts straight. And I was like, was it a British guy who raised the hand?
No, it actually wasn't. It actually
was
wasn't.
a German, right?
Yeah, it was a German,
yeah.
yes.
So the Germans were like, let's try it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was incorrect. Historically inaccurate, that video.
Yeah. I think if we would do something like this in this country, it would be weird as hell.
Yes. No.
So I mean, obviously, because we do tend to be on the wrong side of history. Yeah.
Well, no. What annoys me though is that in terms of it, you're on the wrong side in the Second World War. In the First World War, the thing is, people often forget that actually the First World War, that actually wasn't clearly defined good and evil.
No, and it is to this day not defined. So when I give a tour, I always say, hey, in World War II, it was very clear who the bad guys were. It was us. World War I, it's just for me to preface the whole, like, Hitler serving in World War I, getting radicalized,
exactly.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so I'm always saying, like, it is more complicated because everyone was trigger happy and everyone wanted basically to have a war.
Yes.
So
exactly. No, but that is exactly why it's not just Germany.
Yeah.
That was. I mean, I would say that Germany, I think, does have the most, had of all the blame for all the imperial powers, had the most.
Yes.
I would say 40%.
Yeah.
And then the rest was apportioned to each of the other imperial powers. So Britain, France, Russia, all of them.
Yes, I would say Germany was one of the first,
Pushing.
like the big pushers, like the big players who pushed for it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think, and that's definitely on our side.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
it's still, I mean, unlike the Second World War, which was definitely Hitler's fault.
Of course.
You know, it's still something that I think a lot of people forget. I think maybe it's just because it's easier for people to maintain that narrative of, because Germany lost, they think that it was also definitely the wrong side on the First World War as it was. You know what film I just recently watched, which is amazing, which is, I think, the third version of that film, actually, Invest in Nichts Neues.
Yes.
Have you seen that film?
I have read the book in school.
Yeah, okay.
So and
most
film.
Germans do, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I went to school in Bavaria,
Right.
So gymnasium, so the higher form. And it was, I'm pretty sure it was part of our curriculum, because otherwise teachers in Germany have very little room to play.
Right.
So if I've read it, then it must have been in the curriculum.
Yes.
So yeah.
No, and that's the thing, is that, like, I think that it's also a really important book, because it doesn't, it shows you, it doesn't matter, like, where you were from. You know, war is horrific for anyone. By the way, so Invest in Nichts Neues, which is All Quiet on the Western Front in English, was originally a book by Erich Maria Remarque.
Yeah.
And fantastic book, also released just recently, or I think, last year on Netflix as a new film, but I think there have been 2 other versions.
I think so. There's an older one for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And basically about, I think, this 17-year-old boy who goes, which obviously was normal back then, went to go fight in the First World War, obviously. And the thing about the First World War that was so horrific is that they all went, being like, oh yeah, we're doing this for king and country, and that's what I think in that advert it did show quite well, is that if it wasn't for these politicians, these men would get on
Totally.
you know,
Yeah.
like normally.
There are several studies that said if someone would have used some diplomacy in this whole situation, it probably would have never happened. So, but no one did.
Yes, no, exactly. That's the
No
thing.
one did.
No, but like, yeah, and that's what I have to say. If you're going to watch All Quiet on the Western Front, just be prepared. It's quite intense, and
Yeah.
it's quite like visceral in its like physical violence.
Yeah.
I guess that's what war was anyway.
Yeah.
But,
I think you need to jog my memory. Was it part of the the Stellungskrieg where they didn't move?
stalemate.
Oh, yeah.
Stalemate. In the First World War, because they couldn't get an advantage, it just broke down into just trench warfare. Trench warfare.
And nothing happened. Like they literally died on behalf of like
And
50 centimeters.
Exactly. And it was because the conditions were so awful, because unlike the Second World War, which was very, very mobile,
Yeah.
fought all over the place. Yeah, the First World War, part of the reason why it was so awful is because of the conditions that people had to suffer in the trenches. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also like that's also the stuff that we cannot forget, that everyone who participates in a war is not completely innocent. Like
Exactly.
if you think about that, a lot of Germans starved to death because Britain cut off our supplies.
The naval blockade.
Yeah, the naval blockade.
Yes,
so,
exactly. No, but the thing is that it's so true. Completely agree
Yeah.
with you. And the reason why we don't get held accountable for that is because we won.
Yeah.
Is because
I
we
mean,
won.
the you know, we always learn
History,
the winners.
history is written by the victors.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So no, it's very true. And also, you know, in the Second World War, the bombing of Dresden, you know, where the whole city was destroyed in one night and 30,000 people were killed.
Yeah.
You know, again, we don't get, and the Americans don't get held accountable for that because we were on the right side.
Yes.
But the thing is, though, I mean, I find I don't like saying on the right side because I feel like it does negate all of the opposition that Hitler had.
Yeah.
Because even though I'm not saying it was all the population, it definitely wasn't, but
No.
but a significant portion
Yes.
of the population. I would say probably at least a third of the population.
Who were on his side?
No, who
you
were
mean?
against him.
Oh,
Who
yes.
were- yes,
yes.
at least
Yes.
a third.
Yes.
And then I would say maybe there was a third that kind of just didn't really care, and then a third who were like really.
You know, when it comes to World War II, I think what Germans are really good at is compartmentalizing stuff away. So not looking what's happening, I think, is just the easiest thing to do.
And would you say that's the same with because the thing is, the reason why I kind of also wanted to talk to you about the First World War is because obviously Germany has done a really good job of facing up to its past in the Second World War and all that kind of stuff. But I remember I went on a tour in Belgium that was destroyed in the First World War, Ypres, and it was completely destroyed. It was the scene of many, many horrific battles in the First World War. And I remember the guy who gave us a tour of all the battlefields. We then eventually came to a German memorial.
Okay.
And he was telling us about it and how it was very sort of hidden away, and it wasn't very kind of, you know, it was very kind of austere. It was quite austere. And because when you go there, you see all of these big kind of very ostentatious Commonwealth grave memorials and all that kind of stuff. And so I said to him, I was like, and the reason we went there is because I asked where the Germans had their memorials. And he said, you know, you're the first, in years and years of doing this, you're the first person who's ever asked me that.
If some place remembers the German
Yeah.
victims of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Belgium also it was kind of a pretty clear situation. Germany invaded a neutral
Yes.
country.
No, that's true.
So, yeah, I think for Belgium, probably.
Yeah.
I can feel it. Yeah.
But I guess the point I'm trying to get at here is because and I've said it before, on my tours, I often like to talk about the suffering of Germans, not just in the First World War, but definitely also in the Second World War, because it's suffering that I think is not, Germans never mentioned it. They never mentioned their suffering. It was buried. And I think that this trauma that has been sort of swept under the carpet, it kind of has turned into like a generational trauma.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say, for me, it's a big topic. I own there's one single family picture of my grandmother's family. She had 8 siblings, and just the oldest was in the war, which is a very big accomplishment. That only one boy had to serve in the war.
Because he was just old enough.
Yeah, because he.
So the other ones were younger.
Yes,
Okay,
the oldest one was in the war.
Right.
And so I own this picture and this photograph, and he wears a uniform on it. Just not SS or anything,
Wehrmacht.
just
Wehrmacht.
normal Wehrmacht. And so for me, it's always, am I allowed to display the only family photograph that exists because he died in the war.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is it allowed, or am I not allowed to display it because he wears a uniform? But also he was, I think, 19.
Really?
And I had a discussion with my dad about it, and my dad was like, I truly, truly do not believe that this guy from the countryside in the middle of nowhere in Bavaria went to war because he was a Nazi.
Exactly.
He went to war because, first of all, he had to,
yeah.
and then so it's one of those discussions. Or then also my other side grandmother named her son after her dead brother, who also died in the war, and so and he was always the favorite child because there's so much trauma. Of course, he is the favorite child. He basically is the reborn version of his dead uncle, so to speak. I think that is very hard in Germany, and people tend to forget it, that we are somehow, a lot of Germans were just simply not allowed to grieve.
Exactly.
And even though, of course, Germany was to blame for it, not every...
That doesn't negate the trauma.
Exactly.
That doesn't negate the trauma, and because also people forget that Germany had the second or third most deaths in the Second World War, 8 million people. Obviously, also the mass rape of 2 million German women. All of this kind of stuff, and I always say on my tours that yes, they started the war, but this doesn't negate the suffering of Germans.
Yeah, and I mean, in World War One, basically same topic, and then there it was way more complicated about who was to blame for it all and all that stuff.
Because guys, this is, I think, actually all what it boils down to in Germany is Germans having to literally having to think twice about being able to grieve for someone. Yeah. That really gets to the crux of the issue, I think, and which has been since the Second World War. Am I allowed to grieve?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to be sad that someone who was involved in this, and you will meet people who will say, Germans who will say, no, he fought for Nazi Germany, this, that, whatever. But I really think that is like, you've got to remember that there's nuance with this stuff.
Yes, and you also have to remember there was only one form of flow of information. Not to say they didn't necessarily believe that Jewish people were the bad guys, but for them, speaking of my family, again, from the middle of nowhere in Bavaria, and everyone who fought in the war died from my family, both sides.
Really?
Yeah. Everyone who went to war did not return. And they were all, I'm pretty certain that they were all under the age of 20. So my mother's 2 brothers. So there were 3 kids,
so
2 boys and a great...
Your great aunt.
No, my grandmother's... My great uncle. So,
great uncle. Yes.
So she had 2 brothers. There were 3 kids. My great grandfather, full on a Nazi. I know that he was part of the NSDAP.
Oh wow,
yes,
really?
I totally, and that's a family picture. Everyone is clear. We do not just put on display. But it's also, I'm German, so the likelihood that you have a Nazi in your family is also quite high. But those boys died, and I think for them it was fighting for my country and not fighting for Hitler or fighting to kill the Jewish people or anything like this.
Yes. More like how the Germans in the First World War would have thought that they were doing. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So, and also,
because as we said, the First World War was definitely less ideological than the Second World War.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's a big part. That plays a big role, that we tend to forget that these people had one radio that was controlled by the Nazis. That was their form of information that they got. And that's why, I come from this little village with 500 people in it, and so...
So you still live in that same place where they all lived?
Yes, where they all lived.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
And so my family is still lives there, and so I think they did not necessarily fight for an ideology of the Jewish people being the worst or anything. They fought for their country, and they died. And I'm also kind of like, I know they were grown-ups. I know they knew what they were doing.
But it's like, if they said, I'm not going to do it, like,
yes, exactly.
They
What
would
would
have
have
probably
meant?
been killed anyway, especially towards the end of the war when Hitler ordered everyone between the ages of 16 and 60.
I think so. I mean, if
like
you
that.
take Berlin specific, it was basically boys.
Yeah,
who got,
and if you said no, you would get shot.
Yeah.
So like, you didn't really have a choice.
No.
No.
I mean, honestly, and the only thing is my grandfather, he was even too young, so he got out. Like, he was not used because he was born in 1932. So luckily, he was too young to serve in the war.
Too young at 13 years old.
Yes, and if he would have lived in Berlin,
He would
then
have-
he would not have been too young.
I know,
So
exactly.
it was just because he was from the middle of nowhere. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting but also very complicated topic. That's also the reason why when I go with my group to the Hitler bunker, I talk not a lot, but I do make a point of telling them that Hitler did not start out that way. He, and then he served in World War I, and then with the unfairness, so to speak, he became more and more radicalized. I know it's like very simplified, but because to make sure that they didn't.
No, but it is true.
Yeah, he wasn't born that way, so to speak, and he was just radicalized with all the unfairness, and so. Little side note, I was so surprised. I recently watched Downton Abbey.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And at one scene, the father, Lord something, Earl,
Lord
the main
Grantham, Lord Grantham, yes. Lord Grantham.
And he basically, English, of course, and he drops a line of saying, what are they doing to poor Germany, or something like that, being with like, having to pay all that money. And so
you probably hearing that, as a German, you probably think, oh no, you have probably been bred to believe we deserved it, we had to do it.
Yes.
And so when you hear an English person, or if an American or a French person say that, you'd be like, that's a different perspective, which I didn't know people had.
I think I do not remember. But I'm 36. School has been a while.
You look great for 36, by the way.
I do not recall. I obviously not recall from school all the Versailles and all that stuff, and that we had to pay. I'm not sure if we learned in school that there is another perspective, and that it is a little bit more nuanced and complicated, and not just it was our fault. But
about the First World War.
Yes. First, of course.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty clear on World War II.
No, good. But that's just, I guess maybe what we're trying to figure out here, and by how long our conversation is going on. I thought this was going to be done within like sort of 10-15 minutes, but it is the fact. No, but it's good though. Is from that it shows you just how Germans to this day are still having to wrestle with these questions.
Yeah.
It is such a difficult thing, obviously, like you say, Second World War is a little bit more clear, although I still personally think it's still not crystal clear, because you had lots of resistance. We'll never know for sure how much resistance there actually was and how many people were actually against Hitler. I do think that especially towards the end of the war, most people were at least passively against him.
Yeah, again, referencing World War I, when 1 million Germans demonstrated because they were tired and they wanted this war to end. And at some point, every nation, no matter how patriotic or whatever you are, you're just tired of the war and dying. And especially in World War I, everyone knew a bunch of people who died or starved or
exactly.
I think it was close to 20 million German soldiers or something.
No, it was 20 million in total.
Yes, not dying.
And then 2 million German soldiers, and then a load more. I don't know exactly how many, but then a load more Germans starved. Yeah. But you know what? It's because before they were Germans, before they were soldiers, they were human beings.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely
what it is at the end of the day, and that's why I actually really like. That's what the message is behind All Quiet on the Western Front, is that, everything involved in this debate about, nationalism and all that kind of stuff, ultimately it's a societal construct, you know, which we have, as we've developed as a species, we've put on ourselves. But actually, still what we are behind all of that is actually just a human being with basic needs.
Yeah.
You know?
Actually, to come back to the advertisement for a second, what I really appreciated that they did not portray the Germans as this horrifying people. Because I think to this day, in a lot of where Germans play the antagonists, their accents are like super heavy and it's like very mean looking. And so I feel like they just used regular
normal
people
Germans.
with their normal Germans with their normal German accents. We do not speak all, not all of us speak, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like how it is portrayed as a certain kind of character.
So I appreciated, while I still also feel weird about using a war for
As
their
commercial
chocolate
purposes.
commercials. I appreciated that it was like very equal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I should mention that chocolate bar that you saw in the advert, it was actually reproduced and sold in Sainsbury's stores.
For the anniversary. Oh my god.
No. But and people didn't like this.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't like this. But I personally think that what made it okay is that they didn't actually keep the money. The money they gave the money to the Royal British Legion, which basically looks after veterans and their families.
Yes. Okay. Good.
So
yeah.
I mean, that makes it better, but
Yes.
I still think that like a lot of people, to be honest, most Germans watching that advert would, especially also with their history as well, would make them feel uncomfortable. Yeah. Because like you say, in adverts in Germany, it's usually just an old man sitting at home, not like elaborate sort of high budget sets depicting a war.
No, not German, like not produced in Germany advertisement is super high quality.
Yeah, I mean, that's like Hollywood
that
level.
like what was that film? Was it 1917?
It's all shot in like one shot.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was looking at that.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
It's amazing.
I
You
know
should
I
watch it.
should.
It's really good.
Also like the whole thing of like it being a one-shot film, so no cuts or edits in it is like amazing.
Actually, no, I think there are cuts, but it's made to look like there isn't. But no, they're but like very few.
Yeah.
Actual scenes where they start, and most of the scenes are super long with one take. It is amazing. You should watch it.
So I mean, not that it can remind me of it because I haven't watched it, but it was like super highly produced.
Yeah, exactly.
So wow,
no, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and I think this is also the criticism that it did get back in the UK was people thinking that it was too like Hollywood. You know, because you know how Americans love to kind of dramatize everything and all of that kind of stuff, and I think people did get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was like universally acclaimed in the UK. There was a significant portion of people who said it's not okay. We shouldn't be commercializing war.
Yes,
you know?
but I feel like if they use it, like if they do it, then they need to do it highly polished.
Yeah.
You know, there was no in
That's
between.
true.
You can't do
Yes.
that and then do it cheap.
I like that. Yeah, that's true. That's actually very true. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That, and also what would have made it unacceptable is if they, can you imagine if they actually sold that chocolate Christmas bar, the chocolate bar, and kept all of the proceeds.
That would have been bad.
That would have made it really bad, actually. So the fact that they probably drew it up and were like, God, we can make so much money out of this. And then somebody, thankfully, on their ethics committee or whatever, said, guys, I don't think we can do this. This is definitely commercial. So yeah, glad that they did that. It does make it, I guess, a little bit more palatable.
Yes, for sure. But it's definitely weird. It's like even talking now, it feels like going in my head is like, have I said anything that somehow makes me not being aware of my guilt? You know, the thing of like always knowing that we were the bad ones in everything and never even going slightly off the record with it.
But that's probably why you felt weird though.
Yeah, right? Probably because
it hit something in your head being like, you probably, when as a German, you see those kinds of scenes, it automatically hits something in your brain where you're like, oh God, and it's kind of subconsciously triggers something.
Yeah,
That's probably
especially
why.
when your opinion is required afterwards. It's like, can I say that this is weird?
Yeah.
Or can I say, wait a minute, actually a German soldier started
Yeah.
the hand signature and all that?
I love
It's
that, and that
it's
is
like,
true.
Can I say that? So yeah.
No, and I'm glad you did, because
Yeah.
it is true, but obviously because it was a British commercial, they started with a British soldier.
Yeah.
But if you listen to my podcast, you will, because I did a podcast episode about it, and yeah, it's true. It was actually started by the Germans, and they started sort of shouting across each other. And actually, a lot of the German soldiers spoke English.
Yeah.
Because the German soldiers had, a lot of the German soldiers were better educated than the British soldiers. Because the standard British soldier was, working class, came from, quite sort of humble means, and, wasn't very literate and all that kind of stuff. But the average German soldier was more well educated and all that kind of stuff. And also, though, had actually spent a lot of time in the UK before the war. And in big, like, industrial towns like Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, London. And so a lot of them spoke English fluently. So they were able to just, talk to the English soldiers in English. And there was one instance, apparently, where a German soldier gave a letter to a British soldier who lived in Manchester and said, please, can you give this to my girlfriend? She lives in Manchester.
Aw,
Yeah.
that is sad.
I know, it really is. And it shows you these stories that even, before this huge catastrophic war happened, the world was already by then. So, like, what was becoming is obviously not as entwined as it is today, but it was becoming more entwined, So, yeah. Well, it's been super interesting talking to you. Do you have anything else that you would like to mention?
No, I think I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah, come all to Berlin and
Yes.
take tours with us.
Take tours with us, exactly.
We love our job.
We do. We love talking about history. We love making sure that you understand the history and, giving you the facts and, showing you this amazing city.
Definitely. I think it's a great thing. For me, it's I'm not good on protests and doing stuff like making my voice heard with thousands of people around me.
Right.
But I feel like as a
You
German
can
tour
give
guide,
yes.
I can tell our story to please do not repeat our history, and do my part
Yes.
by doing this.
Thank you for doing it, because it is very important. And I have to say, even though obviously I'm British, but I give tours in Berlin, I do love getting tours here from Germans, because they are the ones who can give you the perspective that you have very kindly given to us in this video. So thank you. And keep doing what you do.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much for watching. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.